All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Wednesday webinar series, Lunch with the Birds. My name is Amanda Duran, and I'm the Program Coordinator for the Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative. All right, hopefully all of you can now see my screen. And thanks again for joining us. And if you have any questions, go ahead to enter those in the chat box as we go along. But I did want to let you all know that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available at our website following the end of this presentation. Usually takes me about a day to get it uploaded. But in the meantime, we do have a number of past webinars, and many of those topics are down here at the bottom. So if you haven't already seen those, I invite you to go to our webpage and check those out. Here's a look at some of our upcoming webinars in our series. In August, we'll be having a presentation on bird conservation and agriculture. And then I'm very excited about our webinar that's coming up in October. That will be on keeping cats indoors, presented by Grant Sizemore of the American Bird Conservancy. They've been doing a lot of great work about promoting keeping cats indoors, both for their own safety and for birds. So definitely check that one out if you do any work in the area of keeping cats indoors, or if you are interested in why to keep your own cat indoors. And then coming up in November, a very fitting time, we'll be having a presentation on wild turkeys. For those of you that are fans of Lunch with the Birds and have joined us before, you may have heard about our donation drive to try to raise the funds that we need to pay for this webinar service that we use for our monthly programs. We are running a double your donation matching donation challenge through July 17th. We're about halfway to our goal of $300, which will be matched dollar for dollar by the Nature Conservancy in Ohio, up to $300. And if we reach that goal, we'll have enough money to host our series for the rest of the year. So every little bit helps. And if you are interested in getting more information or in donating, please visit that website at the bottom of the screen, obcinet.org/donation challenge. And thank you to those of you that have already donated. Your donations are greatly appreciated. Today's webinar is being brought to you by the Nature Conservancy in Ohio. And as I mentioned, they're also helping us out with our matching donation challenge. So we're very thankful for their support in being able to bring you today's webinar. Our presenter today is Lauren McCafferty. She is a program production specialist with the MetroParks of the Toledo area. Lauren started her career with MetroParks as a seasonal employee at Nature Camp in 2013. After graduating from the University of Toledo with a BS in biology with a concentration in organismal biology and ecology. That winter, she helped to establish the Outdoor Skills Program, and she has enjoyed watching it grow and evolve. She loves birds, boats, banjos, and many other things that start with the letter B. So very excited to have Lauren with us here today. So Lauren, I'm going to go ahead and change over and make you the presenter. And while Lauren's bringing up her presentation here, I just wanted to remind you that if you are having any trouble with audio or any issues with the webinar service, to make sure that you have closed any sort of file sharing programs that you have, like Dropbox, and make sure you have all other browser windows closed, and that'll help ensure that your ensure that your webinar is delivered to you smoothly. But if you do have any questions or issues, feel free to put those in the chat box and I'll try to address them. And Lauren has also said that she'd be happy to answer any questions that come up as we go through the presentation. So enter those in your chat box as well, and I will have Lauren address those. So with that, let's turn it over to Lauren.
Thanks, Amanda. As Amanda said, my name is Lauren McCafferty. I'm a programmer with MetroParks of the Toledo area here in Toledo, and I'm really excited to be here talking to you guys about boats, bikes, birds, some other bee things, and most importantly, how outdoor recreation can actually complement conservation if it's done responsibly with care rather than inhibit it. So what we're going to go over in the webinar today, first I'll give you a little background information about MetroParks, what we do and what our mission is. I'll talk about why and how we decided to develop this outdoor skills program. Talk about some current research and thoughts about whether or not outdoor recreation harms habitats and wildlife. And with that, we'll go over some misconceptions about outdoor recreation and how our program tries to work around those. We'll talk about some programs that deal with birds specifically, since I'm guessing that's what everybody here is interested in. And hopefully by that point, I will have sold you on the concept of outdoor recreation, and I'll go over how your agency can get started and hopefully answer any questions you might have. And there's our fleet of kayaks out on the Maumee River last year. I love this photo. This is from one of our full moon kayak paddles. So we had a whole bunch of glow sticks for all the participants, and we took this photo with a long exposure shot, which turned out pretty cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So what is MetroParks? If you're not in the Toledo area or you're not familiar with the concept of a Metro Park district, we're a public agency that serves Lucas County by providing a regional system of clean, safe, and natural parks. We're a huge park system. We currently own 11,500 acres with beautiful scenery, rare and endangered plants and animals, trails, historical sites. We have shelters and indoor facilities that are available for rent. We have a lot of really cool playgrounds, free play areas, a lot of great stuff within our acreage. Our primary funding source, like a lot of park districts, are levies. We're currently operating on a $1.4 million levy for operations and a $0.3 million levy for land acquisition, which I find interesting how much more our levy is for operations rather than land acquisition. I think it's kind of foreshadowing or leading up to this point I'm going to make about how it's not just about buying land and conserving it and having it sit there, but an important part of conservation and being a park district is operating and running programs and connecting with the public on that land, getting them involved. Mm-hmm. And so our mission is to conserve the region's natural resources by creating, developing, improving, protecting, and promoting clean, safe, and natural parks and open spaces for the benefit, enjoyment, education, and general welfare of the public, which is a mouthful, but it probably sounds familiar if you're familiar with other park districts or wild spaces. What it boils down to is that we want to restore and preserve wild spaces, but we also want to offer opportunities for our public to enjoy and learn about those places. Just like I mentioned, land acquisition and conservation is important, but also is public education and outreach. And we are so lucky to have so many awesome natural resources within our park district. We've got the Oak Openings region with a lot of really great green corridors that connect fragmented habitat. We've got part of the Lake Erie coastal zone within our parks. We have the Maumee River, one of our best resources, as well as some of its tributaries. And we have remnants of the Great Black Swamp, which is always fun to interpret. Not so fun with the mosquitoes all the time. But so the first part of our mission, like I've been alluding to, is about conservation and restoration. We do a lot to preserve all these natural resources that I just mentioned. And as far as bird-specific initiatives, we have our population of breeding lark sparrows, which is really neat. We monitor them and conserve their habitat pretty intensively. We have a lot of bluebird boxes all around the parks and some dedicated volunteers who monitor the bluebird populations. We also have monitoring for raptors, cavity nesting birds, and a lot more things that aren't birds. We do frog monitoring, butterfly monitoring, bat monitoring, all sorts of things. And so I guess I'll take a moment here to point out that a lot of my webinar, my presentation, will refer more to conservation as a whole, not just bird conservation specifically, but of course, I'm sure everyone understands, any conservation is bird conservation, conserving habitat, conserving resources that provide food to birds, shelter to birds, and that's what we're all about at the MetroParks. But as I've said, a park district isn't just about buying land and letting it sit. We've got to remember the second part of our mission, the benefit, enjoyment, education, and general welfare of the public. All of those are really important things, and all of those conservation efforts that I mentioned, our bird conservation and other conservation efforts, they're kind of rendered useless if we can't reach the public. Especially since we're tax funded. The public can't be asked to support us if they don't know what we're doing, or if they have a vague idea, oh, MetroParks protects land, but they don't know the specifics, and they don't know how the conservation impacts them as residents of this area. They're not going to be able to support us. So how do we do that? How do we reach the public and engage the public? Well, we do a lot of it through programming. A very important part of MetroParks, again, just like any park district, we are able to teach people directly about our resources, about nature and the environment, with educational programs. And on-site programming is really important. And we've been doing on-site programming for years, certainly since I've been with MetroParks. For instance, going back to the lark sparrows, people can learn about lark sparrows on Wikipedia pretty thoroughly, but they're going to feel more connected if they go to the place where they nest and they see them and they learn from a naturalist who is passionate and enthusiastic. They're going to feel a lot more connected to the resource and maybe be more inclined to, say, respect our signs that say that our sand dunes are closed for the season because of ground nesting birds. And that also ties into interpretation rather than lecturing. Interpretation seeks, as the National Association for Interpretation says, it seeks to provoke and relate and reveal rather than just teaching people about a resource. It seeks to make a meaningful connection to that resource that's going to inspire them to care about the resource and then go on to support its conservation. So with that on-site programming and that interpretation, we've had really successful nature education programs. Adult field studies, nature camp, homeschooler programs and field trips, tons of really successful nature education programs, which we've been fortunate to have at MetroParks. So you may be asking, well, if you've been so successful with that, why even bother with recreation? Why go into that field? Well, it was 2013, and the programming department as a whole kind of realized that we were having a bit of a problem. We've got this agency that does a lot of conservation. We also do interpretive programming to connect with the public and our supporters, get them involved and knowledgeable about the conservation that we do, and encourage them to support it. We've got that, it's great, but one problem we realized that we were facing, again, I'm sure along with a lot of other park districts out there, is that a lot of times we were preaching to the choir with our programs. We had a lot of returning participants who came to program after program and are avid MetroParks supporters, and that's great. The people who always come to our nature programs, we need them. There are outspoken, MetroParks advocates. There are the people who come to volunteer, the people who help to raise awareness when it comes time to pass a new levy. We definitely need them. But we also need to reach new people, to draw new audiences in. And we weren't exactly sure how to do that. We realized that the fact of the matter is, some people just aren't going to come to a park for an educational program. some people just aren't interested in an educational kind of nature walk, an adult field study type program. They're simply not interested. So we started kind of thinking, well, maybe they'd come to the park for a different reason. And I love this quote, "Adventure is out there," from the Disney Pixar movie Up. And it might seem kind of cute and trite, but it's true. Maybe they'd come to the park for an adventure, for something a little more exciting, or at least exciting sounding to them, rather than an educational program. You know, this word, adventure, it's been kind of like a buzzword, especially with kids, teens, young adults, in the media and social media. For instance, I use Instagram, which is a really simple photo sharing website if you're not familiar, or app, I should say, smartphone app. And it seems like every couple pictures I scroll through is some quote about "drink the wild air" from Emerson, or "adventure is out there." This quote here pops up a lot, or something about wanderlust. It's this big thing, and for good reason. Outdoor recreation has been increasing in popularity for lots of different reasons. Exercise, people started to get tired of hitting the gym every day and lifting weights for exercise, and I'm one of them. I would much rather go outside to get my exercise in. Same with family bonding. I think personally, maybe the age of the too much screen time and the video games and watching movies and Netflix has maybe started to get to people, and parents and families are wanting to go out and maybe take a camping trip with their family instead of staying in. Mental health. Studies have shown that a little bit of fresh air and time in a green space, not only is it good for you physically, but it's a great booster for your mood and your mental health. And so all these reasons, outdoor recreation is huge right now, and adventure sports. And at MetroParks, we do community surveys pretty regularly. And over the past several years, they've all indicated that our audience, our taxpayers, the people of Lucas County, their outdoor recreation needs are not being met. Cleveland MetroParks has an awesome outdoor recreation program, as does Dayton. And people were traveling there to get their outdoor recreation fix, which is great. Again, I'm one of them. I've traveled to those places too. But we saw this gap that we could fill right here in Toledo. You know, like I've been setting up, we wanted to reach new audiences, and our community has expressed this need for recreational experiences right in their backyard. But we wanted to be sure that we did that without compromising our mission of conservation, that first part of our mission. In fact, not only did we not want to compromise it, we wanted to enhance it. We wanted to accentuate our mission. So we got through the why go into this, and now we're kind of faced with this question of how. How are we going to develop this outdoor recreation program to meet our goals and meet our needs? And so we realized that the key to doing all that was to facilitate these meaningful, lasting, interpretive recreational experiences. You know, we realized that the key was not to become MetroParks Kayak Academy or MetroParks Archery Club for young professional archers, but rather to use recreation as a hook to draw those new audiences, to attract people who might not be interested in coming to the park otherwise. And then, once we've gotten them there, once we've gotten them signed up for a program, then we can use that experience as a vehicle for our mission. That was the whole idea. And the idea kind of revolves around this important point that recreation doesn't occur in a vacuum. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that the backdrop, the venue, the arena that the recreation is happening in is a huge part of your experience, of your adventure, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's kayaking, hiking, snowshoeing, anything. I mean, this is a really simple, crude exercise here, but there's a lady. She's jumping. She looks like she's having a good time. I'm interested in whatever it is she's doing, but wow, when you put her against the backdrop, again, the venue of whatever it is she's doing on a day hike, it becomes a lot more interesting, a lot more enticing, to me at least. You know, I want to know where she is, how she got there, if she's going to go climb that huge mountain beside her there. And so, you know, this is just a free stock photo that I found on the internet, but we realized we could do the same thing here at the Toledo MetroParks. This is my colleague Mike. He's fishing. Again, he looks pretty into it. He looks interested. But wow, look at that. And that's the Maumee River. That's down at Farnsworth Metro Park, if you're familiar with the area. Beautiful, beautiful river to explore and play on. And here's one more. This is another one of my favorite pictures. This is our fleet of canoes and kayaks. Again, I'm interested. I see these boats here. I'd be curious to give them a try, but this, I love this photo. That's the Toledo skyline back there, and it was a program we did last year where we were able to canoe and kayak right downtown, right where all the restaurants are on the docks, and with the skyline in the background. It's just another illustration of how the venue is so important to the experience. And if you all take a minute to think back to a time that you did something adventurous, and hopefully you've done at least one adventurous thing in your life, whether it's canoeing, kayaking, a bike ride, hiking, snowshoes, like I said. If you think back and try to remember that, I would guess that you don't just remember the motion of your legs pedaling the bike, or the feeling of how comfortable the kayak seat was. Although if it was very uncomfortable, that might be all that you remember. But no, I'm guessing that you remember where you were, what you saw. Since we're all bird lovers here, you probably remember if you got any lifers on that trip, if you saw any really cool birds. And so this concept of recreating within a venue that can be interpreted and forged a connection with the participants kind of became the staple of our program. So now that we've had a little background on our program and the logic behind it, of course we realized there would be some barriers going into forming this program. And one question that we asked of ourselves and each other was, well, can't recreation kind of harm habitats? Can't it kind of go contrary to our mission? And it can. The fact of the matter is recreation can have negative impacts on land and on wildlife. Nobody's saying that recreation never harms anything. That's a very simplified and rather naive way of looking at it. Here are just a couple quotes from some papers that I found addressing the subject in preparation for the webinar here. And both of those quotes, they were actually, each quote is they're from the two real scientific reviews I could find on the subject of the impacts of recreation on wildlife. And I think they both go to show that we simply haven't been studying this long enough. Recreation has just started to really take off, and there aren't any long-term studies on the impacts. The studies and the papers that are out there, so namely these two papers are the two that I found, they're literature reviews, and they consider some of the possible consequences, but there's no real data, certainly no long-term data, on the direct impacts of recreation on biodiversity, abundance of species, etc. And that's actually one thing it's unfortunate for our planning purposes, but it's also exciting in that we would really like to contribute data and help to get some long-term impacts quantified and described. So as an example, we have a lot of new properties. I glossed over earlier some corridor properties. We're building a green corridor between two of our metro parks to connect some of the fragmented habitats. And we have a lot of properties that we're getting ready to open, and some of those properties have awesome opportunities for recreation too, but we plan to monitor any kind of species of concern or habitat of concern. We're going to monitor those things before any development takes place at the park, continue to monitor them while it's being developed and getting ready to open, and then keep monitoring after the park opens, and try to compare the figures of species abundance, species diversity, and really try to track our impacts of recreation at those parks. And again, hopefully that data will be able to help other people too, who are looking at recreation but are a little nervous about its impact. So overall, we, looking at these potential impacts and the fact that not a lot of research has been done, we decided that we believe there's a balance to be found here. That there's a balance to be struck between the potentially adverse effects of recreation on nature, a balance between that and between the impact of inspiring someone, of creating a lifelong conservation supporter through these meaningful recreation experiences. And that brings me to another quote that I found really impactful. Scientists insist they don't want to lock people out of nature. Spending time on a mountainside or hip deep in a trout stream is tonic for brain and body. Research bears this out. And people who recreate outdoors are among nature's most ardent constituents. Without them, our landscapes would erode even faster than they are now. And I really like that quote because it embodies, again, the whole purpose of us creating this program, that people who recreate outdoors are going to make these meaningful experiences that make them become advocates for nature and for the places where they can kayak or snowshoe or whatever it is they love to do. So that's a good little summary, I think, that quote. So talking about mitigating some of the negative effects of recreation, trying to get some of those potential adverse effects down to a level where they are worth the positive impacts. How to do that? How can we do that? We asked ourselves. And we decided to start with some things that strike us as misconceptions about outdoor recreation, but could in fact be more like pitfalls. If an agency were to start setting up a recreation program without being mindful of conservation and good land stewardship, some troubles they could encounter. So we wanted to kind of identify some of those things in advance and figure out how we're going to work around them. So one such misconception about outdoor recreation could be that it prioritizes thrill and recreational value over respectful land use and, say, conservation value. That's a perfectly legitimate misconception, but we decided right off the bat to make good stewardship a priority. Thankfully at MetroParks we have an awesome team of staff members who work with all sorts of different things, and we were able to ask our colleagues to help us. We were able to ask our natural resources managers and our monitors and our land stewards, hey, where would be the best place to put in a kayak dock here at our new park? Where should we put this that we're impacting as little habitat as possible? If we want to go off trail or off site, we'll call them up and say, hey, have you documented any rare plants in this area? Should we avoid this trail? Are there any trails that have already been used and we can reuse the same trail? So working interdepartmentally like that is very important to us, as is public education. If we need to make a decision that impacts the recreation experience. We don't just, stand as the overlords of the experience and say, we're doing this because we said so. No, we want to educate the participants, and again, by doing that, hopefully inspire them to care. So a good example of that is a new Metro Park, our newest Metro Park actually, Wiregrass Lake, has a beautiful quarry pond that's awesome for canoeing and kayaking and stand-up paddleboards. And at first, we were using a beach kind of area of the pond to launch our boats and kind of spreading out along the shoreline until, of course, we consulted with some of our colleagues who said, hey, there's some really good dragonfly and damselfly habitat along this shore, and it might not be the best idea to spread out so far along the shore. So that was when we decided to put in a kayak dock so that we were only disturbing that one small part of the shoreline habitat. And the thing about docks is that they can be a little trickier to launch your kayak from a dock as opposed to a nice sandy beach. So some of our participants were a little unhappy about that, but once we told them about how important the dragonfly habitat is and how important it is to preserve it, they really understood, and they respected the decision more and came to kind of care about the odonate population there. So public education is definitely important. Another misconception, it places too much emphasis on technical skills and athleticism to be beginner-friendly or accessible to all audiences. Again, it certainly can be if not done with care, but first of all, we offer way more beginner programs than advanced skills programs. We cater almost every program we do to the participants, to the beginners. And if we do offer a more advanced program, we be sure to make that clear so that no one's coming into a scenario and feeling unprepared. We also place a huge emphasis on adaptive programs. All of our outdoor skills programs are adaptable for people with physical disabilities or cognitive disabilities, which is really cool. We've been able to make really big impacts in people's lives by helping them to get on the water or get out on snowshoes or do archery, which is really great, and it helps us to make sure that our programs are accessible to everyone. And with all those things, what we're trying to do is kind of catch people right at the beginning of what will hopefully become a lifelong hobby if they have a good experience, and kind of teach them the right way to do things from the get-go. And hopefully, if they continue to go out and have those experiences, say with their friends, they'll spread the lessons that they've learned from us and kind of spread the good stewardship around. Another misconception, it's too skill-based, and maybe intensive is a good word, to facilitate a meaningful interpretive experience. Well, right away, we established a very important rule that's called never ignore nature. We live for teachable moments at Outdoor Skills. If we were in the middle of teaching a kayak stroke, say, to somebody, and a kingfisher flew over, a low flyby, and we ignored it to keep teaching that kayak stroke, we would be totally missing the boat, totally missing the purpose. So we have a policy to never ignore those teachable moments when they come up, those interpretive opportunities. A lot of what we do, it does tend to be more spontaneous interpretation, similar to like roving interpretation, kind of interpreting things as they come up, as opposed to other nature programs where you might go in with a specific interpretive plan and a specific idea of what you want to interpret. And that's okay. And that's a really good challenge, too, for interpreters, to be able to interpret on the fly and teach people about things as they happen to pop up. And another thing that we do to make sure we kind of squash this misconception is that we make sure our staff is well-versed, not just in their archery aim or their cycling, how far they can cycle in an hour. We make sure that they're educators, interpreters, and that they're familiar with the natural features in that venue. So all of our outdoor skills staff in addition to getting intensive stand-up paddleboard training. Actually, just last week, our staff went through 3 days of stand-up paddleboard training, followed by a day of Project Wild training and a day of Project Learning Tree training. That's a really good example of how we want our staff to be well-rounded and to be able to not only facilitate these fun and safe recreation experiences, but also to interpret along the way and make sure that they're really holistic, meaningful experiences. So, now that we've got those kind of misconceptions out of the way, I figured I'd talk about some of our programs specifically and try to highlight some of the ones that deal with birds, since that's what we're interested in here. So starting with paddling, which I've referenced a couple times, mostly because it's a personal favorite of mine. But our paddling programs always include awesome bird sightings. Thankfully, the MetroParks are great habitats for a huge variety of birds, and we always see some really great birds when we're canoeing or kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding. Wiregrass Lake is our newest park that I mentioned, and I mentioned that we decided to put in our kayak dock so that we can localize the heavy recreational use to one area as opposed to spreading out along the whole shoreline to drag our boats in. And that's important to preserve that shoreline, which is valuable habitat for a lot of things. At Wiregrass Lake, odonates, the dragonflies and damselflies are crazy. It's a huge hot spot. I believe at this point over 50 species have been recorded at that park, which is awesome. And so when we were developing the park to open to the public, we were sure to include interpretive signage about the odonates and why it's important to use the dock as opposed to just putting in your boat anywhere along the shoreline. We also included interpretive signage about why it's important to keep the pond clean, about washing your boats, especially if you're going from an inland pond to something that connects to Lake Erie, like the Maumee River. Fishing is huge at Wiregrass Lake, so we included some signs about why it's important to not dump your bait out at the lake. So again, that public education element is huge. And our kayak dock is accessible, which is very cool. It's wheelchair accessible, and it features something called the Easy Launch system. And at the end of the presentation, I'll put my contact info up if anybody is interested in learning more. But the Easy Launch system is very cool. It's basically like a chute with rollers that you can set your kayak on and then really easily just kind of roll it out into the water. So it's very easy for people who have limited mobility to be able to get out on the lake. And some of our upcoming parks, including Middle Grounds and Howard Farms parks, will feature all those same features. Middle Grounds is our first truly urban metro park. It's in the heart of downtown Toledo, right in the middle of it, which is really cool. I'm very excited for that park to open up. And Howard Farms is out in Jerusalem, Ohio, near Metzger Marsh and the Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge, if you're familiar with the area. And both of those parks will have accessible kayaking and canoeing and paddleboarding. Howard Farms is going to be great for that too. Nice paddling around in a marsh setting. Another fun little fact that I always like to point out, our canoes are actually named after waterfowl, and our kayaks are named after dragonflies and damselflies. And it's fun. The kids love it. It creates a dialogue. Especially if we have, say, a field trip or a program where we're not going to have a chance to get to know and remember all of the kids' names. If we need to get their attention, the easiest way usually is to shout out the name of the boat they're in. So when we're launching the kids in the canoes, for instance, we'll tell them, okay, you guys are Widgeon, okay, and we'll share like a fun fact, if we can, about whatever bird the canoe is named after. We have one of our canoes is named Coot, and in Toledo, our baseball team here is the Mud Hens, which is another name for coots. So the kids always love to get to be in the coot boat. And it's just a fun way to create a little dialogue and work a little nature interpretation into our programs. Oh, and just some common birds that we see a lot while we're paddling: kingfisher, osprey, bald eagle, herons, and swallows. Always love to interpret the turkey vulture. It's one of my favorites. And here are just a couple pictures. So putting aside that idea of venue and backdrop, because this is a not so exciting pool, but this is our adaptive paddling workshop we did. So that's me actually in Prince Basket Tail, and this is one of our paddlers who came out to help us with the workshop. His name is Andrew, and he has a low-level spinal cord injury. And so as you can see, we outfitted his boat with some nice foam and duct tape to help give him a little more trunk support. And then in this picture, I'm helping him out to get back in the boat, assuming that he fell out, and helping him feel empowered that he can kayak safely and feel confident that if he does fall out, he'll be able to get back in the boat. So again, all of our programs are adaptive, and we like to be able to give anyone who wants to have these kind of experiences the opportunity to do so. Here are our new stand-up paddle boards, which we got through a grant from the Ohio Division of Watercraft. Kids go nuts over the stand-up paddle boards. I mean, everybody does, adults too, but kids are really good at it also. They put the adults to shame almost every time. I don't know if they've just got better balance than us adults do, or maybe it's because they're not afraid of falling off, but the kids love the stand-up paddle boards. Here's another one from that full moon program with all of our glow sticks. It was really fun to paddle underneath the full moon. We saw a black-crowned night heron, which was very cool. And this is from kayaking Metzger Marsh, which is a really neat place to kayak. It's on the coast of Lake Erie. It's an inland marsh, and it was very cool. We heard a lot of different waterfowl calls, and a lot of them you couldn't really see because they were in the reeds, but it became this really fun game to try to have the participants count how many different calls or songs they heard from birds. So people really loved that. Moving on, our bike programs are always a big hit. I should say right now that Bike and Bird does involve stopping your bike before you look through your binoculars. Biking while birding is very dangerous. Always stop your bike first. We've done Bike and Bird programs at Oak Openings, Pearson Park, which are great bird parks. We have another new property called Manhattan Marsh, which is near downtown Toledo. And there's an organization called Color Wheels that is run through the Toledo Museum of Art, and they do community bike rides once a month during the summer. And one of their rides, they rode to this new property, which is nearby the museum, and a naturalist met them out there to do some bird ID and bird interpretation by bike. So that was a really cool partnership and a way to get outdoor skills involved. And the cool thing about biking is it allows us to visit way more sites than we can when we're walking. So, you know, an hour-long birding program walking might take us through, I don't know, one or two different habitats, probably just one trail. But an hour of biking, or I'm sorry, an hour of birding by bike, you can visit different habitats. You can visit a bunch of different trails, all different corners of the park, and maybe get a chance to see more birds. There's a selfie from one of our bike and bird programs at Pearson Park. I love this picture. That's actually my supervisor on the left there, and one of my colleagues. They dressed up for a Halloween bike ride that we had last year. Ashley is a red squirrel, of course, and Amanda is a dragonfly. Maybe a ruby meadowhawk? I can't quite tell. But here's Amanda interpreting to some of the kids on the ride. They loved her costume, of course. And of course, there's a helmet under there. Bike safety is always important. This is cool. This is a local group here in the Toledo area called Peak, and they have a ton of different adaptive bicycles. So you can see in the back here there's a tandem recumbent bike. That's very cool. In the foreground here is a bike that you pedal with your hands, which is great for people who don't have legs or poor mobility in their legs. So we're able to partner with them and use some of this equipment to get people out cycling and hopefully looking for birds, which is great. And then some more upcoming programs or miscellaneous programs. Cash In, Trash Out is a national, or I should say international, geocaching initiative. If you're not familiar with geocaching, it's kind of like a worldwide virtual scavenger hunt. People hide things and then post the coordinates for other people to go find these things. And so this Cash In, Trash Out is this initiative for people to go geocaching and simultaneously collect trash while they're out looking for these geocaches. So that's an awesome and simple way to work on conserving bird habitat. This weekend, hopefully, we're doing a program called Boats and Binoculars with Ohio Young Birders Club. We're really excited. I'm very excited because I can teach these kids how to kayak, and they will teach me a ton about birds. But unfortunately, we've been having problems with the Maumee River and all of this crazy July rain. So I'm hoping that the river is not too fast for that. I just planned a group to go and do the Christmas bird count by snowshoe out at Oak Openings, one of our parks. It's going to be very cool. I'm catering it towards beginners, so hopefully, again, using it as a hook, we have a really dedicated kind of group of participants who love snowshoeing and come out to all of our snowshoeing programs, but probably don't know about the Christmas bird count or might not be interested. But hopefully they'll come out to snowshoe and hopefully be impressed by being involved in this really cool event like the Christmas bird count, and hopefully become interested in birds. I've also been doing some outreach with the Toledo Rowing Club, a group of high school and college and professional level rowers, which is really important because they're out using the river anyway. Every day they're out rowing on the river. And so I've been going into their youth camps and doing a little bit of interpretation about how we keep the Maumee healthy. Last year, I'm sure you remember Toledo had its water crisis, and so the kids had a lot of questions about that. And I was able to educate some of them and interpret them, and also interpret all the cool birds. In fact, I did this just yesterday with the camp, and we saw a great blue heron, and one of the girls said, "Oh, I've seen that same bird when I was rowing before, but I never knew what it was." So hopefully getting some of those kids interested in birds in the river. There's our snowshoes. One of our local news stations came out to interview us right after we got our snowshoes, which helped. I think a lot of people became interested after seeing that news story. Our snowshoes fit almost everyone. Almost everyone. Poor Alberta, she couldn't come with us. And this is cool. This is Mark Armstrong. He works for the Ability Center of Greater Toledo, which is a group that helps people with adaptive sports and helps people with physical disabilities to participate in different things. And so this is an adaptive archery setup where the base here is either weighted with sand or something, or if the participant is in a wheelchair, they can just park their wheelchair on the base, and then this arm holds the bow so that anyone can do archery with just one arm, which is very cool. And this is our marketing director. I think it's his grandson actually fishing at our big outdoor expo event that we have every year to kind of show off some of these outdoor skills programs we have. So like I said, hopefully by now I've convinced you that outdoor recreation is awesome and can be implemented without getting in the way of your agency's mission. And the first thing you should do is absolutely steal our ideas. If you liked the sound of any of those programs I talked about, please run the same program. If you don't really know where to start, we'll start by looking at those venues, those backdrops, those arenas to recreate in. You know, do you have waterways for boating? I'm pretty sure everyone at some point of the year has snow for snowshoeing or cross-country skiing. If you're saying no to the question, are there any geocaches in your park already, I bet you're wrong. Geocachers are geocachers, the people who do it, are pretty avid. They've got geocaches everywhere. And so there might already be some in your park to use. So once you figure out which venues you have, places where you can make recreation work, think about what resources do you want to interpret within those venues. You know, what do those venues have that you really want to highlight? And then just put them together. So another example, going back to Wiregrass Lake, we had this beautiful pond that would be perfect for paddling. We also had this natural area with a huge diversity of dragonflies and damselflies, so we put them together. And we included that interpretive signage. We named our kayaks after the dragonflies and damselflies to start a dialogue. We run programs that are specifically designed to kayak the lake while we talk about and look for dragonflies and damselflies. So find the recreation opportunities, find the interpretation opportunities, and then put them together. As far as gear and staff training, there are lots of grants out there you can apply for. And again, I'd be happy to help if anyone needs recommendations. And you don't need to go out and hire, 6 staff members who have 20 years of kayak experience. People often relate better to folks who are not super elite or they don't perceive as super elite. People who are relative beginners like them. And again, there are a lot of grants that you can use to get some of your existing staff trained to be able to do some of these programs safely. So wrapping up here, and then we'll be able to take some questions if anyone has any. This is another one of my favorite quotes. The care of rivers is not a question of rivers, but of the human heart. And it's true, people can't be expected to care about that which they've never seen or touched or connected with. And recreation facilitates those meaningful experiences that inspire people to care about the land. And another quote from that same article I referenced earlier, only if nature is healthy will it be able to sustain and support us in the future when we burst through the door after a long week and we hit the trail looking to lean on its strong shoulders. And that's what we're trying to do here with the Outdoor Skills Program. We're trying to make this connection where we give people a good experience canoeing or snowshoeing or hiking. And if they have fun and have that good experience, well, they're going to want to keep canoeing. And if they want to keep canoeing, they're going to realize that the only way they're going to be able to keep canoeing on the Maumee River is if the Maumee River is still there and if it's clean and protected. And so if we can point it out to them by means of interpretation during the program, then they're going to realize that that's exactly what MetroParks is doing. We're trying to protect the Maumee. We're trying to protect habitat and wild lands. And so kind of connecting all these dots where if someone has a positive experience doing outdoor recreation, they're going to get passion to protect those venues, those resources, and preserve them, and support MetroParks and our efforts to conserve them, whether that means voting for a levy when they might otherwise vote no or might not vote at all, whether it means coming back to volunteer, which we're starting to see now. Some of our participants who used to come exclusively to outdoor skills programs, they're starting to volunteer and they're starting to come to other programs, nature programs. So like I said way back at the beginning, the people who would never come to the park for an educational program, well, we're starting to get them to do that, which is very cool. and really, again, just forge these intimate experiences, these lasting experiences that feature our natural resources in the background. And that's what Outdoor Skills is all about. So there's my contact info. Again, if you have any ideas or questions or want help with any of the resources that I've mentioned, and this is what our canoe and kayak instructor always says at the end of the day: questions, comments, or emotional outbursts, any of the above, I would be happy to answer.
Well, since folks are muted, the emotional outbursts might be a little difficult. But if you do have any questions for Lauren, please go ahead and enter those in the chat box, and we can hopefully address those. But thanks, Lauren, so much. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to grab my kayak and head out on the water right now.
Awesome.
I did have a question here while we're waiting for other folks to answer any. You talked a lot about activities where folks are kind of restricted to a kayak or a canoe. I'm wondering about how this, how you're able to have the same sort of control over the interaction folks have when it's a birding group or if folks are even out birding on their own, how you're able to deal with conflicts that would arise from people getting too close to a nest, or photographers maybe going off into an area that has some sensitive plant species. Just if you have sort of a general policy for dealing with any of those kinds of issues.
That's a great question. Because yeah, as you mentioned, something like getting too close to a resource, it's hard enough when everybody's walking behind you. Put everyone in a floating thing that they're not so good at controlling yet, and it becomes a lot harder. And I think a big part of that, at least specifically with paddling programs, for instance, is to start by teaching the techniques. Like I said, we don't want to become MetroParks Kayak Academy, and we don't want to focus so much on the skills that we lose sight of the nature and the interpretation. But it is important to give people the basics of whatever recreational activity you're doing, so they at least feel comfortable in, let's say, controlling their boat, of being able to get safely from point A to point B if they're on a bike or on snowshoes. Because it's hard to ask someone, oh, please move back a little bit, if they're not sure how to walk backwards on snowshoes, which the answer is you usually don't, or they're not sure how to turn their boat around or how to back up, and then it becomes embarrassing for them. And so making sure that they're equipped with the foundations of being able to do that activity safely, it really helps that group management aspect. And helping to make sure that nature is being respected, and wildlife is being respected.
Great. We have another question here that came in from Bethany. She really likes your geocache trash out, activity. She wants to know if there's any other activities you do that involve or teach people about the impacts of litter on birds and other wildlife. She says she doesn't think some people realize, the impact that litter has on, like fishing lines, for instance, is a great example of that.
Yeah. So we haven't done a ton of those programs yet, but we would really like to get involved. I actually just learned about a grant that is available through the American Canoe Association, which is the major kind of professional body of canoe, kayak, stand-up paddleboards, whitewater rafting, which we don't have so much of in Toledo. But they're the big paddle sports organization in America, and they have a really neat program called Paddle Green, where they sell for a pretty small fee these big, really durable green sacks, and they encourage people to take them out in their boat when they paddle and just fill them with trash and bring them back in. And we just learned that they actually have a grant, like a small grant to give these bags away to organizations who are going to use them. And so just stopping to pick up some litter and interpret it along the way is a really good way to teach people. It can be kind of worked into any program that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just the specific cash in, trash out, although that's very cool too.
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage you to think to reach out to like your city or local organizations that might be involved. So for instance, Partners for Clean Streams is an organization that does a lot of work cleaning up waterways, and they have an event called National Clean Your Streams Day, and we've been thinking about trying to get involved with that to kind of get a group out. Usually the Clean Your Streams Day is people volunteering on foot on the banks and shores of the streams, and we thought it would be really cool to have a group actually out on the streams in boats cleaning up. So there's another idea about how you might be able to do that. There's a cool little activity that we do in archery sometimes where it's called an archery scavenger hunt. And I just had this idea. So what we do is we take any random items, usually what's laying around the office. So maybe some old blank CDs that we're not going to use. Maybe we pull a plastic water bottle out of our recycling bin. And then we tape those up on the archery targets, and it's like an aiming exercise. So we'll say, okay, now try to hit the CD, or now try to hit the water bottle. So maybe a cool thing you could do with that would be to take a walk around the area first and collect some trash that you find, and then put that up on the archery targets.
Yeah.
And then you could be shooting at litter, which is evil. So, I mean, like I said, I just kind of came up with that idea. It's a little goofy, but it's a good example of how, with a little creativity, you can kind of work that into a lot of different programs, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time here, so I just want to thank Lauren again. I really enjoyed the presentation. I hope everyone else did as well, and I hope that you will come back and join us again next month for our presentation on birds and agriculture. So in the meantime, go to our website, obcinet.org, and check out our recording. And the recording of this webinar will also be sent out through email with a listing for next month's webinar for anybody who may have missed it. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and thanks, Lauren, for your presentation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks, everyone, for listening.